Ian Sutherland and Valerie Tate from Poplar Grove. We're live tonight from the winery, which officially opens here on Naramata Bench. A sensational evening of mixed clouds and sun and people and wine, and it's going to be great. Stick around. You're listening to Vancouver's only primetime drive home food and wine show, the best of food and wine. Yeah. Well, I remember that was almost like Farmgate days.
Totally.
There was still that term Farmgates,
yeah.
but well, all that's gone by the boards now. You've opened this gorgeous winery, which I don't know. Well, you can set the stage. Are we on the south end of Munson Mountain? Is that how we would say that?
Yeah, we're on the southwest corner of Munson Mountain. So behind us is a park. In front of us is the whole of
the toe of the lake.
Yeah, exactly. The whole of Penticton shoreline and the mountains, the apex mountains in the background. So
and the peach is in the foreground.
Yeah, exactly. You can always navigate by the peach.
Yeah, in Penticton. It's a beautiful site, and I was talking earlier to Patrick Edwards about, he was one of the guys that helped to build the facility, and how it slides so nicely into the landscape. Was that part of the thinking when the property was bought, or the winery was built?
I think Tony Holler and Barb Holler, my partners, they own a big share of the winery, and they bought this piece of property recognizing that it was a stellar piece of property, and that we might use it someday. That day came sooner rather than later, and so it was with their foresight that we got this piece of property. Once we had it, then we were able to sort of try and define what are we going to do with it, and all of that, you know, we wanted it to have a big presence, to look good. Yep. To not stand out and be, you know, ostentatious or gaudy or any of that. It meant to be, I think there's a term called transparent architecture, where you're trying to blur the boundary between indoor and outdoor, because, you know, this is the Okanagan.
You've done that.
Yeah, I think we have. I think that the design takes into account, you know, the beauty of everything around
the
us.
exterior wood, all of that.
Yeah.
Our guest is Ian Sutherland. He's the executive winemaker here at Poplar Grove, and of course the founder of the original winery, now one of the partners. We'll be speaking a little later on with the major partner, Tony Holler, and his wife, and Val Tate, who is the viticulturalist here now. Val, what's really cool about the new place is there's, you have done the gardens as well, and you've done a great job. Tell us a little bit about what went into creating that.
Well, this is a kind of an extreme site. It gets a lot of sun, a lot of wind. It's very hot in the summer. It can get very cold in the winter, and we can have marauding deer. So we had to have landscaping that kind of put up with all of that. And then also it needed to be easy to take care of because, you know, we're busy in the vineyards and the winery. And so we settled on a type of gardening called xeriscape landscaping, which means that you use plants that really are well adapted to the environment, in that they can tolerate the climate and they can tolerate the pest pressure. Deer, people, insects, diseases.
Are you saying black sage is being planted everywhere?
We've got some on the, well, you know, it's a beautiful plant. The native plants are absolutely beautiful.
Tell us a little bit about the native plants.
So would you be using cactus?
Actually, you got to get Ian's preferred use of cactus.
I don't know if you know this or not, but right above us is Munson Mountain Lookout, where all the teenagers go to neck, right? So and drink and
tequila.
Yeah, exactly. Also, it's, you know, famously known as 9 Month Mountain. Yeah. So anyway, there's a little bit of pressure of, you know, boys being boys want to climb down the hill and look at the new winery, but God in his infinite wisdom has planted a vast array of prickly pear. Right? So it's part of our security system.
You can't get down.
You can try, but it's hurtful.
So one or two will do it, and then the word will spread, right?
When people see the wineries, they drive up. By the way, nice job on the new road all the way from Penticton. I don't know how you managed to open a winery and get a new road about 5 kilometers long, but it's a smooth drive, I must say, up to Poplar Grove now.
I'm surprised it hasn't attracted more skateboarders, to be honest. It's a fabulous downhill.
We shouldn't let that out too soon.
Okay.
They will be here. So have you planted some vines, Val, here at the estate as well?
Yeah, actually we planted the vineyard 3 years ago, and we invited a whole bunch of friends of the owners to come out and plant 11 rows. And so we spent one very hot May long weekend. It was 35 degrees, and we planted 11 rows of Cab Franc. It took us all of 6 hours to plant those 11 rows with about 22 people.
Nice.
And then we had lunch and started drinking Pinot Gris, and that was the end of planting. And then we had the crew come in and plant the rest of the vineyard, which was about 3 acres in size. So we're going to finish it next year, plant it right up to the winery.
You left a strip while they were building the winery, but they will come right up.
Yeah, didn't know how much room they were going to take, and so we needed to leave space. But
So there was an overall plan to leave the space.
I wanted to get as
winery.
much vineyard as possible because this is a beautiful site for vineyard, but we had to have space for the winery. So,
So how do you keep the deer away?
oh, fences, dogs. We often chase them out. You know, they come in through the gate. There are so many deer on in Naramata, and they love this environment. They're thriving, but there's almost too many of them now, and they're a big problem. And they love grapevines.
Ian, in Vancouver, many people know Poplar Grove is a small winery with hard-to-get wine. You know, it's always sold out, or it's in little places. And so I guess when Tony, Tony joined the team and came in and brought, I think, about 100 acres into the fold.
Exactly.
So is that what triggered this winery and sort of the future plans to process this size of fruit, or how will all that work into the Poplar Grove picture?
Well, I think it's a myth to think that you can't make very handcrafted wines just because you're making more of them. When Tony came in with his 100 acres, I mean that actually gave us the courage to expand, because it's very difficult to convince people. People who've been growing apples and pears, and now they're putting in this grapes as a cash crop. It's very difficult to convince them that we really have to do all this huge amount of work and a light crop load in order to get the results we want in the glass.
Sure.
So when he came with all the land, then it was pretty ezy. We were able to say,
You control your own
this
site.
is all our site. This is all our crew, our planting. Val's got, manages the whole thing, and her mandate is simply to deliver the world's best Okanagan fruit to my door.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about, we're going to talk about a wine you brought along, the Chardonnay, which is one of the kingpins, I think, here at Poplar Grove. Can we say that? Or how would you describe what you're doing then in terms of wines?
Well, in terms of wines, I think there's my personal, and I think it's the winery favorites are in the reds, Merlot, Cab Franc, obviously, and Pinot Gris and Chardonnay.
So it's pretty tight focus.
Yeah, we're not trying to have, I think we've got 6 products total, which, and then we have a wine club, so we make some specialty products. Gives us a chance to try out new things, and but essentially we want to focus on those wines, and of course our legacy, which is our Bordeaux style blend, the spoiled child of the winery, all those kinds of things. So the Chardonnay, we're really pleased. We actually, when I was down surfing in Margaret River, I got to visit Lewin Estates, and they do a fantastic job
With that hazelnut Chardonnay that they make.
Exactly. It's beautiful,
delicious.
world-class Chardonnay, but you taste the grapes in their vineyard and their neighbor's grapes, and there's no difference. So clearly it was the winemaking technique, and what they did, they were generous enough to share with me, is that they take the Chardonnay, and instead of doing batonnage and stirring it up weekly, getting all the yeast sediment and reincorporating that, getting those nice cashew and nutty flavors back and rounding out the wine, they roll the barrels.
Yep.
So they don't open it up and stir in a bunch of air. We've tried so hard to keep the primary fruit flavors. So that was something I came home with, and from there it was a pretty simple process of having the racks made that do the same thing. So that is one of our focuses.
Our guests are Ian Sutherland. Of course, he's one of the co-owners and executive winemaker here at Poplar Grove, and Val Tate, who's working in the vineyards. I want to talk just briefly, because we're going to talk to a number of people tonight on the show about Naramata Bench. It's a special place. Will you make a, quote, Naramata wine, or will you see that as something that, going down the road, where you'll say, this is a Naramata Bench wine as opposed to a Poplar Grove wine? Or how do you see this bench? What is so special about the bench?
And did you know it was this special when you first arrived?
Didn't have a clue. Not clue.
Even when you were up on Munson Mountain making out with oh, I see.
It's a long time ago,
that was a long time ago, yeah.
That's my sordid past. I think the real thing is that we will be making Poplar Grove wines as our main focus, but because we've got such a unique site right here, what we want to do is we want to have a single vineyard Pinot Gris, and a single vineyard Cabernet Franc from this
From
site.
here, yeah.
So that will be our homage to the Naramata
That may
bench.
sit right in this lovely little barrel room.
I think
we're
it
sitting
probably
in.
will.
Yeah.
The tanks are here. We're ready for harvest. We've got 30,000 liters capacity, so that would easily do our Chardonnay and Pinot Gris, the portion from here.
Yeah.
And I think that, to answer your question about what makes this bench so special is that it is unique in the world. It has the most, as Val can tell you a little bit about the growing conditions here, but it's a very well-defined strip of arable land. There's a rock mountain, a lake on the east and west, and there's more rock in a park on the north and a city on the south, and that's it. It's a very small amount.
Yeah.
And a short growing season?
Short growing season, but lots of hours of sunlight. And during the growing season, with those hours of sunlight and warm conditions, you get tremendous growth in a short season.
And complex old soils.
Yeah, beautiful soil.
Yeah.
Very high in gypsum, very high calcium levels, so can impart great minerality.
And what I like best is that, unlike Napa Valley, the lake is where all the vineyards are in Napa, and the bench in Naramata is where all the vines are. So
Yeah.
it's a fantastic site to be situated on. And well, I don't know how many of you are here now, 16 or 20
Oh, no, it's more like 30.
wineries. 30 wineries on the
30.
bench.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's
When we
it's a
started, we were
force.
number 5.
Number 5.
Yeah. And now there's 30, and
But your goal's to be number 1 now, right?
Oh, well.
Yeah, that's a different goal.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
a different discussion.
Well,
And
listen,
you are an amateur winemaker. Sorry,
Completely.
Tony.
yeah.
So what advice do you have for somebody who is an amateur winemaker?
Well, I think that if I had a word of advice, I would say go to a wine consultant and buy an array of wines that are signature wines of the world. Taste them and see which ones you like, and then define your winemaking according to that. You can't make wine unless you know where you want to go, and you first have to have the ability to say, this is a very expensive bottle of wine, and I'm trying it with friends, and we're really focusing on it, and we're having it with food, and we're having it alone, and what about that wine? So that is the basis of education for winemakers. There's nothing else.
And you don't get many shots, really.
No,
Even though you
God.
could say you've been in the business for 15 or 20 years, but it's
I've
not
had
a lot
17 vintages,
Yeah.
19 if you count a couple of help outs in down under.
So 19 chances is really not a
Yeah.
lot. So you got to get it right from the start.
You do,
Yeah.
and I think every winemaker builds on the shoulders of those people who came before, and I just there's been that many people, wittingly or unwittingly, who have helped me in my education.
Well, I think Father Pandozzi will be glad to hear about that. Although some say he didn't really have anything to do with wine here now. Listen, I know 300 of your closest friends are coming through the door
Exactly.
shortly, and you have much to do. We appreciate you kicking it off and hosting us, and we'll be speaking with Tony later and talking more about Poplar Grove. And we'll catch up with the Cap Franc, I think, in the next section.
All right, well, thank you for having
Yeah,
us.
Val,
Thank
thanks
you.
for joining
Pleasure.
us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. Ian Sutherland and Valerie Tate from Poplar Grove. We're live tonight from the winery, which officially opens here on Naramata Bench. A sensational evening of mixed clouds and sun and people and wine, and it's going to be great. Stick around. You're listening to Vancouver's only primetime drive home food and wine show, the best of food and wine.